Hey YouTube, welcome back to week number 3 of the NFL season. Of course, this is your man Dylan coming to you once again with another wonderful videos outlining the third week of the NFL season. My feature matchup for this weekend will be on Monday Night Football featuring the Detroit Lions taking on the Baltimore Ravens. I'll be discussing this matchup along with a bunch of other matchups in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So, as usual, a little recap from last week. Green Bay won last Thursday against Washington. Washington's banged up this week. We'll get to them later. Dallas survived the upset-minded Giants 40-37 in overtime. Aaron Rodgers does not win in Pittsburgh in his home debut there in the Steel City, losing by 2 touchdowns to the Seattle Seahawks. Cincinnati, similar story. Every other year, they're going to lose Joe Burrow for at least 3 months with a grade 3 turf toe issue. They lost him in the second quarter, but still rallied to defeat Jacksonville 31-27. New England won on the road against the Miami Dolphins in a crazy finish that should have had Miami winning that one, but it got overturned essentially at the end. But New England won that one by 6. In the Super Bowl rematch, the Eagles defeated Kansas City 20-17. That sent the Chiefs to 0-2 on the season and the first 0-2 start for Mahomes in his career. And then the Bucks last Monday had a walk-off touchdown to win by 1 point down there in Houston. All right, so the 1 o'clock matchups, they're all listed there. The interesting ones, Pittsburgh, New England will be an interesting one. Also is the Raiders and the Commanders there. So the last one on the top right screen and the bottom right one as well are the interesting ones. The other 5 in there, I'm not really interested in them. They could be competitive because it's the NFL, so you never know what's going to happen. All the teams I got highlighted, either red or black, are my projected winners. I'm not going to do over-unders because it doesn't really matter. But go ahead and look. Give me Atlanta, Green Bay, Houston, Pittsburgh. Washington will survive at home. Tennessee, I think, is going to pull the shocker and give me Tampa Bay at home as well. Then on the flip side, with the 4 o'clock window, 4:25 will be on Fox this week. The big matchup is Dallas and Chicago. I've got Chicago in that one. Give me San Francisco to go 3-0 in the battle of 2-0 teams down there in the NFC West. And then Seattle will also win at home against the god-awful New Orleans Saints in Seattle. It's also important to know this Sunday will be the 50th anniversary of CBS's NFL Today show. So they're going to have Brent Musburger back. They'll have the old retro theme back. So make sure to check them out at noon Eastern on CBS. Make sure to go check them out because that will be a great show to watch leading up to your 1 o'clock action. All right, the matchups I want to discuss. So of course, I want to discuss the primetime matchups, a couple of the big matchups on Sunday, and then we will close it out. So starting on Thursday Night Football, starting off tonight. In Buffalo, Buffalo is a 11.5 point favorite in the first of 2 matchups against the Miami Dolphins. Miami's sitting there at 0-2, Buffalo at 2-0. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, and Kelly Hartline will be on the call for this one on Prime Video, as usual. So, starting with Buffalo, they had a big-time beatdown of the New York Jets. They won by 20 in the Meadowlands. Josh Allen had himself a day on he had 148 yards passing. He had some good rushing yards. James Cook was the story of the day, though, in Buffalo, having 2 touchdowns on the ground on 132 yards. Just kind of a sluggish performance on offense, but they still got the job because their defense played absolutely lights out, forcing, I believe, they did force 1 Jet turnover that would have been an interception, a fumble lost by the Jets there. But they just looked like the most dominant team in the not only their division but in the AFC, in my opinion. They're taking on a Miami team that got the doors blown up against the Indianapolis Colts and then just lost at home against New England Patriots in Mike Vrabel's first win as the Patriot head coach. They just look out of sorts, and they're on the verge of just gutting the whole building, start from scratch, and just be in rebuild mode because what they've got in the building right now is just not good enough. But with all that said, this looks like a clear blowout game. Buffalo opened as a 12-point favorite. It went up to 12.5. It's now gone down to 11.5. And I think the NFL is trying to toy with you a little bit if you're picking Buffalo in this one. So I will take Buffalo at home, but go ahead and give me Miami to cover that 11.5 point spread. I mean, it's a divisional matchup. I think this is too easy to pick. So go ahead and give me Buffalo to go to 3-0, have a commanding lead in the division after week 3, and pretty much just set the tone for if you want to win the AFC East, you've really got to beat Buffalo, and it's going to be very difficult to do with the caliber of roster that they have. But go ahead and give me Buffalo in this one to go get the job done on Thursday. All right, hitting up the Sunday action. Starting off with the featured 1 o'clock matchup on CBS will be a battle of backup quarterbacks featuring the Cincinnati Bengals going to the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is a 3-point favorite at home. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson will be on the call there on CBS. Check your local listing to see which game you're going to have in your area, but this will be the featured 1 o'clock matchup on CBS. So, Cincinnati won against Jacksonville. It was their first 2-0 start since Marvin Lewis's last year there back in 2018. But of course, the bad news is that Joe Burrow will be out for the next 3 months with a grade 3 turf toe injury. So that means Jake Browning is the guy, at least for the foreseeable future. Whether he's going to be the future for the next 3 months remains to be determined. But Jake Browning had some sloppy mistakes against Jacksonville, but he was able to bounce back in a big way, capping off his comeback with a walk-off rushing touchdown in the QB sneak there off the goal line. Jamar Chase had a huge day with 165 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins also had a touchdown catch in this one, but they're off at 2-0. Minnesota, though, similar story. They lost their quarterback for the next 3 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. So that means Carson Wentz will be the guy, of course, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City, and a bunch of other teams. But the flip side of them is that they lost in the Sunday night matchup against Atlanta 22-6. So that means they didn't even muster up a touchdown, which is really sad. Justin Jefferson, he had 81 yards on 3 catches, which is nice, but not what we expect from an all-pro receiver. And then their running back, I believe it'll be Jordan Mason, had only 30 measly yards on the ground with this one. So, with all that said, if it comes down to who's got the better talent, who you have more faith in, the talent obviously favors Cincinnati. They've got the 2 all-pro receivers. They've got the running back that can do the work. But the question mark is their defense, because you're giving up 27 points to a Jacksonville team that just looked like crap in week 1. On the Minnesota side, who knows what Carson Wentz is going to be? I mean, we know he's been a career backup for years, but he really hasn't been in this role before, at least having his own team for the next, month or so. You just haven't heard that sentence completed in probably about 7 years. So the question is, will he be able just to walk into that Minnesota room on his first start in Minneapolis and just get the job done? So if this comes up to me, the last 2 matchups between these 2 teams have come down to overtime and a field goal. Both those matchups have favored Cincinnati. Both those last 2 matchups have been in Cincinnati, not in Minnesota. Now, it's been well documented that I am a die-hard Bengal fan. But I like to live in reality sometimes. And while it may sound great to be 3-0 at the end of this, I just think that's going to be the case this week. So go ahead and give me Minnesota at home to go to 2-1 in the season. Cincinnati will also follow 2-1. But again, since this is a non-conference matchup, it's not going to have too much of an effect on them come playoff time if they're in that position. But go ahead and give me Minnesota at home to get the job done there. All right. The other 1 o'clock matchup, that will be the feature 1 o'clock matchup on Fox, though, featuring Joe Davis, Greg Olsen, and Pam Oliver, will be a NFC divisional rematch from a season ago featuring the Los Angeles Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles, a pair of 2-0 teams coming off great wins in their first 2 games. The Rams won a non-conference matchup at Tennessee, 33-19. Matt Stafford looked the part. He almost had 300 yards passing. The team almost had 150 yards rushing. Stafford had 2 touchdowns passing. There was 2 touchdowns on the ground. Devontae Adams had his first big game as a Ram, having 106 yards and a touchdown. Puka Nacua had 91 yards receiving and did have a little bit of a pitch there for a touchdown on 4th and 2 or something against Tennessee to go get that one. Philadelphia, on the flip side, only needed to have 101 passing yards to win against Kansas City in a defensive showdown, essentially, when they only won 27-17. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown combined to have 80 yards on 9 catches. In most cases, that'd be a great day if you're playing them, but it resulted in a loss for Kansas City, so it wasn't the best day. Even Saquon Barkley didn't have 100 yards rushing, which is kind of unusual given the recent tear that he has been on, starting when he played the Rams back in, I think it was week 11 of last season. So it has been well documented in the last 2 matchups that the Rams' run defense has just been trash. especially against these Eagles, where Saquon Barkley just ran all over them. It hasn't been even close when it comes to how many yards he had in those two matchups in the regular season and the postseason a season ago. But we're looking at a Rams team that, while they are giving up 111.5 yards a game in their first two games, so it spells signs of trouble. A lot of that rush yardage, it comes down to, like, it factors in QB runs and the pitches and all the other stuff. So is that number really accurate? Who knows? It could be accurate. It couldn't be accurate. But I'm big on revenge. And historically, yes, the West Coast teams coming out to play a 1 o'clock game on the East Coast. It's been difficult for them. Not in Seattle, though, because they've been 18-2 in their last 20 matches when going on the road to play a 1 o'clock game. But in the Rams' case, I just think they're due to have revenge against these Eagles. I think they're going to win this one on the road. Give me the Rams to win. They're going to cover the 3.5-point underdog spread there. But go ahead and give me the Rams on the road to get the job done in Philly and win a revenge matchup that could possibly be an NFC title match at the end of the NFC playoffs there. All right, my fourth matchup will be a 4:05 local kick on CBS featuring Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, and Melanie Collins in an AFC West division rivalry renewed between the Denver Broncos going to the Los Angeles Chargers. This is the Chargers' first true home game because, of course, their first home game technically was in Brazil when they beat the Chiefs. This is also the Chargers' third straight divisional opponent. The next time the Chargers will play a divisional opponent will be in Week 13, the week after Thanksgiving. So, let's start with Denver. Denver, of course, lost to Indianapolis. They should have won that one if it weren't for that leverage called against the defense there. Bo Nix had a decent day. He didn't have the high passing yards, but he did have 3 touchdowns that were crucial for that one. J.K. Dobbins has been pretty decent. He had 76 yards on the ground and a touchdown there. And then, was it Troy Franklin? I think that's what it is. Had a touchdown catch, one of 3 of Bo Nix's touchdown catches in that one, but it was all a loss. They're sitting there at 1-1. On the other side with the Chargers, they're sitting there at 2-0, coming off wins against Las Vegas on Monday night, and then of course the Chiefs down there in Brazil. Justin Herbert has been nearly flawless in his first 2 matchups this season. The rushing part, though, is concerning because for a Jim Harbaugh coach team that is used to running the football, they only had 81 yards on the ground. Granted, against a divisional opponent, taking on the Raiders, who have Max Crosby and all those parts and pieces, but only 81 yards on the ground. Quentin Johnston had a touchdown catch in this one. Keenan Allen had the other touchdown catch, but that defense had 3 turnovers for the Raiders. Now, it's important to note that Khalil Mack will not be playing this matchup because of an injury. He'll be out for an extended period of time. So that is a big part on defense that we're going to need to investigate and be a little bit concerned about if you're starting the Chargers on defense on your fantasy team. But with that said, Denver's loss should not have been a loss. They should have been 2-0 coming into this matchup, but they're not. They're sitting there at 1-1. So with that in mind, I think they're out for kind of a comeback week of like, we need to come out, play clean football, and get the job done. So again, I've not picked this many road winners in this show and probably forever, but I will take the Denver Broncos to go get the job done in Los Angeles. They'll go to 2-1, get a key road divisional win, which is rare to come by in these days. But go ahead and give me Denver on the road to get the job done there. And they'll also, of course, cover the 3-point underdog spread. All right, my last 2 matchups will, of course, be Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. Sunday Night Football, kind of a dud, not the best, featuring the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants, both of them shockingly at 0-2. More Kansas City on the shock level than the Giants are. So, starting with Kansas City, it's just been off all year. I mean, it's only been 2 matches, but that's what this year has been. It's just been 2 games. So, in those 2 games, they have looked not so good against the Chargers, looked like absolute trash against the Eagles, having that one explosive play at the end of the game to really make that a 3-point game, even though it was really a 10-point game. But the concerning part is that Patrick Mahomes, while he did have 187 yards, 59 of those were when they threw to Tyquan Thornton there. But he was the leading rusher once again on that team, which has Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. That is a massive issue that Kansas City is going to need to get fixed. And, of course, Travis Kelce. He was the leading receiver with 61 yards, but he did have that bobble that led to the interception for the Eagles that ultimately set up the game-winning drive or the game-winning go-ahead or put-away drive for the Eagles at the end of that game. On the Giants side, they had a lead against Dallas throughout the entire game. Even with 25 seconds left in the fourth quarter, they were up by 3 points, and all you gotta do is close out the game. And they couldn't do it, which is a theme under the Brian Daboll regime ever since he went to New York. Russell Wilson, he had himself a day. 450 yards passing, by far the highest yardage total in the league last week. Not the highest touchdown counts. That will come in the next matchup. Cam Scatterbo, the rookie, had 45 yards and a touchdown on the ground. The league neighbors, Demarcus Robinson, absolutely went off. Neighbors had 2 touchdowns. Robinson had a touchdown. They both had north of 140 yards receiving. Insane numbers. So if you had him on your fantasy team, guy, you were just licking your chops with that one. But again, resulted in a loss. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, and Melissa Stark on the call on NBC. Giants are a 6-point underdog at home. I'm going to be honest. I think the Giants are going to keep it close. It's in the Meadowlands. You've got the crowd. And if they get a win, A, what are we going to say about Kansas City? But B, what are we going to say about the Giants? And are they going to be competitive? And not only in their division, perhaps contending with like the Washingtons and the Dallases of the world, but who knows what could happen with them? I mean, one win can lead to a slew of things happening, like turning that one win into 2, and then perhaps into 4, and then who knows what happens. But I live in reality. I'm going to take Kansas City on the road in this one. Giants will cover the 6-point spread, but give me Kansas City. They're going to win this one and get their first win of the season. All right, then rounding out this video, okay, it's going to be my featured matchup of the weekend, and that's going to be on Monday Night Football, featuring 2 powerhouse teams from a season ago, featuring the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens, live in Baltimore, 8:15 on ESPN, also simulcast on ABC, and the Manning brothers will have their Manning cast on ESPN2 for this one. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman and Lisa Salters and Laura Rutledge will be on the call for this one in Baltimore. Baltimore is a 4.5-point favorite at home. Both teams are 1-1. Both teams came off home divisional wins, and they were blowout wins. Starting with Detroit, Jared Goff had 5 touchdowns passing last week, throwing for 334 yards. It was an absolute field day for that offense, with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery combining for 151 yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 3 touchdowns on 9 catches. Jameson Williams had a touchdown. They forced 2 Chicago turnovers. It was a field day for them. On the Baltimore side, not as much when it came to just high-flying Showtime offense. I mean, Derrick Henry only had 23 yards on 11 carries. That doesn't sound typical for Derrick Henry, but playing Cleveland has been a struggle for any of those power teams like Cincinnati, Baltimore, or any of those like big-time teams. It's been a struggle to just have a blowout win against them. Now, while on the scoreboard they did win by 24, Lamar Jackson had 4 touchdowns in that one. It was a grind to get to that blowout status. Like Detroit, Baltimore forced 2 Cleveland turnovers. Their second-year wide receiver out of North Carolina, I think it was Des Walker, had 2 touchdowns on his 2 catches. That was 2 of the 4 touchdown passes thrown by Lamar. Zay Flowers had pedestrian numbers, 75 yards on 7 catches. So, dating back to kind of the last 5 years, the last couple of times that Detroit has gone to Baltimore, it has been a disaster. Ravens won the last matchup, I believe it was 2 years ago. It was 38-6. And that was when Detroit was trying to. It was kind of the litmus test for Detroit to see if they could compete with the big boys. And at that time, they just couldn't. It wasn't even close. The other matchup that comes to mind is that Justin Tucker, of course, not in Baltimore anymore, had the NFL record 66-yard field goal to win in Detroit, 19-17, in that walk-off fashion. So, in Detroit, been kind of close. In Baltimore, not so much. Now, do I think that Baltimore's going to run away with this one? Absolutely not. Do I think Detroit's going to look like they did against Green Bay? No, I think they've kind of figured out what they need to do to get the job done on offense. And that involves jet sweeps and the creativity and all the stuff they did last year in that massive performance a week ago against Chicago. So with that said, it really comes down to, I feel like I say this a lot in the last couple of weeks, who you have more faith in. while Detroit has got all the offensive firepower. So this Baltimore, they actually match up quite nicely with that Detroit defense that gives up a boatload of points. I'm going to take Baltimore in this one. They're going to get the home dub. I do have Detroit covering the 4.5 point spread. This could easily be an exact replica of what happened with the Chiefs and the Rams about 10 years ago with Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes in that 40, I think it was like 48, 45 back and forth crazy affair. It could be one of those, but give me Baltimore at home to go get the job done there to go to 2-1 this season. Detroit will fall to 1-2 and have some question marks. All right, this wraps up week 3 of the NFL football preview show. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Like the video, comment your thoughts. Thursday Night Football starts in a grand total of an hour and a little less than that. So be on the lookout for Buffalo and Miami to kick off your week number 3. And I'll see all of you next week in week number 4.